Hello everyone, it's me. I'm Julie McDowell and welcome. Today we're going to talk about raised stenciling. But before I start, I want to ask you to subscribe to my website. If you would like a copy of all the videos that I do, whether they're live or they're pre-recorded, if you subscribe to my website, I will email them to you and then you can have them on your own magic device and you'll be able to find them whenever you want them. Because when I post them onto Facebook pages, they get lost and people can't find them. So I spend a lot of time tagging people in videos. So this is a much easier way for me to do it. So if you go to my website, which is worldwideweb.dandelionsandpoppies.com. All one word, that is dandelionsandpoppies.com. And you'll see a subscribe button will come up on the very first page, and just fill it in and then you're on the list, and then I can send you the emails, the videos by email. You only have to do it once. The other thing, people keep asking me, do I have to keep subscribing? No. And if you try and subscribe again, it will tell you that you're already subscribed. So you only have to do it once. Once you've done it, you're on the list. And if you have already done it, it means that you should by now have received quite a few emails from me. I don't bombard you with emails. Probably one every couple of weeks, maybe, depending on how many videos I do. But it's a really good way for you to be able to keep them in a good place. Anyway, enough about that. So today, raised stenciling. Now, we've talked about this a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of information. But the same questions keep coming up again and again for people who have never tried it before. So I just wanted to address those today. And the number one question that people ask is, do I need a special stencil in order to do raised stenciling? And the answer is no. You can use any stencil that you have. This is a very, very thin stencil. It's 5mm in thickness, which is not a lot thicker than a sheet of paper. And this one here is, again, it's film. It's not a different color. That's paint that I didn't wash off. It's kind of stained it now. This is thick. This is probably over 10mm, and this was actually produced for doing raised stenciling, but it's not imperative that you have them. It's easier. I will not deny that it is easier to use a thicker stencil to get a really nice raised effect, but you can get the same effect with thin stencils. And I have actually done this with making my own stencils with card, and that works too, but we don't need to do that these days because we've got all these wonderful stencils at our fingertips. So that's the first thing about stencils. And the second question is, what do you use? Now, there are loads and loads of products out there, loads, and a lot of the paint companies are making their own, and that's great. And there's a lot of stuff in DIY stores that's been around for years and years, and that's great too. So I'm going to show you 3 products today that I just happen to have here. They're not the only products I've ever used, I just don't have anything else here right now. The first product is a powder made by the Fat Paint Company. Is it the Fat? Yes, the Fat Paint Company, and it's called Extra Fat. I'm saying nothing. And it's a powder. Can you see that? Sorry, the light's shining. Anyway, it looks like icing sugar. Okay, and you mix that with paint, preferably fat paint. And here's one I made earlier. I didn't want you to sit and watch me stirring paint into powder. So you put some paint in a dish, a little bit, like a tablespoon maybe, and then you gradually add the powder and you mix it all up and make it quite thick, okay? Because that's the secret really for doing raised stenciling. If it's too sloppy, it's going to go underneath the stencil. It's like when you're doing regular stenciling. If you have too much paint on your brush, it will go underneath the stencil, and that's when people get upset and discouraged. But don't be discouraged. Just paint over it and do it again. So that's the first product. The second product I have is by Maison Blanche, and it's got a very fancy name. It's called Glaçage. And this, let me just clean my knife so I don't contaminate it. This is quite gloopy, comes out of the can like that. Okay, and I like to use this particular product if I'm doing a stencil that has large cutouts, and I'll show you one that I've just done. This is on the front of a sideboard door, and this is a stencil that I've used many times. It's a huge stencil, and if you've seen my videos, you've seen this before, and I like to kind of tape off parts and just use the bits I want. So I used the glaçage to do this one, and I put it on really thick and not evenly, because that's the look I'm going for on this particular piece of furniture. Just going to put that down, it's incredibly heavy. So that's that, and then finally, good old joint compound. Okay, sorry, the light's a bit glary, isn't it? So this says ultralight, all-purpose drywall compound, and it's ready mixed. I haven't actually ever tried the, I think it comes in powdered form, but I've never done that anyway. So drywall compound is known as spackle, polyfiller in the UK, mud, plaster, I can't think of any other things, but you know what it is anyway. Joint compound, it's all the same stuff. But the most important thing about it is when you take the lid off it, often the water, if it's been standing for a while, the water will rise to the top. And you really, really have to mix all that water in. Otherwise, when you try and use it for this purpose, I mean, it wasn't why it was invented, but we're using it for different applications. Anyway, you have to really, really mix the water in. And if it's too sloppy, put it out onto a dish and leave it. And here's some that I put out. And this is, you need it to be quite thick. Okay? So that's some that I put out earlier today to make it thick. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is how you apply it. And there are lots of companies are making special tools for this job, but you really don't need anything special. So you can use a putty knife. Okay, this is a plastic one. But if you look at that edge, that's all we're looking for is a straight edge. And this credit card has the same straight edge. So that is what I like to use. You're just looking for something that's quite stable. You can use either edge, depending on what you're doing. And you pick it up and you can get quite a lot of control over using a credit card. That's why I like it, because your hand is much closer to the work. The other thing you can use, and I like to use if I'm doing quite intricate stencils, is something like this, and it's an artist knife. And I like the fact that it's bent like that. It's a palette knife, so that you can pull it towards you and you can manipulate the compound or whatever you're using quite nicely. So let me show you what I have already done today. So here we go. First of all, here I used the fat compound, the fat, extra fat. No, I didn't. I'm sorry, I'm telling you wrong. Ignore that. This is the extra fat, this one here. Okay, so this was the first stencil I did, the very, very thin stencil. And I put down the compound and it was fine. And then alongside it, I did the thicker stencil. And when this one was dry, when the first one was dry, because it was only thin, because you're not going to get much of a raised effect with this stencil, lay the stencil back down over it, and I'll show you how I did that in a minute. So this has had 2 passes of extra fat over it, and it's now pretty much the same raise as this thicker stencil alongside it. So that's how you do it. If you've got a thin stencil and you're not getting the result that you want, you lay it back down and you do it over again. So up here, this is the drywall compound. Now, what I did here was I mixed some of the same color paint that was in the fat, extra fat. I mixed the same color paint in with the drywall compound. Now, you can mix it. Look, it's come out fine, but it's not as dark because obviously this drywall compound has water in it and that has diluted the color of the paint, but it works just fine. So that's what I've done there. And again, I've just used the very, very thin stencil here. And I'm going to show you what you do if you want to go over it to make that thicker. So you lay it back down. And the other thing you have to do with these very fine stencils is you really have to clean them because they've got such tiny elements. So what I like to do is put the stencil, the compound on the stencil itself like that and keep picking it up from there. Okay, fill in all the elements and lift it back up. And there we are. That is now twice the thickness that it was before. So it's now the same. If this was 10 mil and that's 2 5s, my math makes 10. So that's that. And here is the glaçage. Same thing, same stencil, very, very fine stencil. And this was the thicker stencil. So you can see they've all worked fine, absolutely fine. What you have to do is once it's dry, depending on how you've applied it, you run your hand over it and you can feel that there are some kind of raised sharp bits. So I have a very, very worn out sanding sponge that's certainly seen better days. And I just use that to oh, that's not very clever, is it? To sand over, let's see, I made it dirty. And smooth it out, and then when that's how you want it, and you really want it to feel smooth, you don't want it to feel sharp, you then paint over that. And that is where I'm going to show you next. I hope you can see this. So this is a drawer that I actually painted, and then I used the extra fat and did a raised stencil. And what I've done here is I'm leaving a circle. There are 2 drawers, and I'm leaving a circle in the middle of the 2 drawers, and I'm going to do an image transfer on there. But I actually painted it one color, and then I mixed the extra fat and did the raised stenciling with another color, and then in my infinite wisdom decided I didn't like that. So I've now painted over the whole thing, and what I'm going to show you is, and this I've shown this before, is once this is done and you want to go back and highlight the raised area, you lay the stencil back down over the raised area. Okay, you match up the pattern and you lay the stencil back down, and then you paint just those open elements that you can see there. And it works absolutely fine. If you try to paint over the top, it's going to go right through to the surface of the drawer. And even if you try and dry brush, just very, very lightly drag a brush, it's still going to contaminate what's underneath. So that's how I do that. I'm just going to look and see if anybody has any questions now, because it really was, and the main reason I wanted to do this was to see if anybody had any questions, and I don't see that they do. Hello everybody, hello. Okay, So nobody's got any questions, so that's fine. So really, that's pretty much all I can tell you right now. Just have a go. You can use anything you want. You don't need to go out and buy expensive materials. Don't, in fact, because you might not even like it. Use a credit card, use a hotel room key. Don't go and buy an expensive piece of equipment that you're then going to just put in your box and never use again. Find the stencils you've already got and go and buy some drywall compound. Or if you've already got some of the fat stuff, now PIY paints, they make a fantastic powder. Paint it yourself. They have a very similar product to fat. There's loads. I can only talk about the ones that I've used personally. I don't want to talk about any products that I haven't used. So these are the products that I use and stand by. And also, if you buy any Maison Blanche products direct, if you put in the code Julie's Recipe when you're checking out, you'll get a free sample of a paint color that I invented, which is pretty special. So while stocks last, I think you should rush out and do that. And give the extra fat powder a go. It's really good, and their paint is good too. I really like it. Victoria. Okay, that's it. That's all from me. So don't forget to subscribe. World Wide Web, dandelionsandpoppies.com. I'm Julie McDowell. That's my website. If you want my videos, subscribe. It's dead easy. Okay, I'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.